Hey woodworkers. So I have my drawer built. I've cut out the groove and then I've decreased the size of the back so that the bottom can slide in. I've also dropped down the top edge of that back so it doesn't drag inside of the carcass. So I'm ready to start fitting now. The joinery is done, it's glued up as I said. I'm not worried about truing any of these things because when I fit the drawer, all of this is going to maintain or become nice and true, and so I'm not worried about that. One thing I would do in preparation of fitting this drawer is start waxing the interior of the carcass. If you haven't done this already, this is going to be such a huge part of the experience of where this drawer is going to live. Get out of there. Alright, so fairly low tech. I get a pile of wax and I start distributing this on where the bearing surfaces are going to be for the drawer. So the sides of your carcass for sure, as well as the top and bottom edge. So where they engage in the top of the drawer and the bottom of the drawer, those things have got to be waxed. Nothing else is terribly critical for this except for those areas. I should say though, as a reminder, inside the interior of your carcass you cannot apply any finish, any solvent-based finish, especially where you have a mating surface area here of this drawer. If I were to use a solvent-based finish on this location where I'm putting the wax, and possibly another coat of finish on the interior or the exterior of the drawer, those, depending on how well fitting that drawer is, can start to fuse together when the drawer is closed, and then the next time you go to open it, you don't have the option of opening this thing up. So give me a second, buddy. So waxing all this, I'm going to eventually wax the drawer as well, but right now that's what I need to do in preparation of this carcass. You probably can't see it here, but I've marked where the front of this drawer or the carcass is going to be, so the fitting all happens from here. If this is your actual solid wood carcass, the front is going to be very obvious. There'll also be an open back for the fitting experience. If I've enclosed this back, this process really doesn't work because when I fit it, there's going to be a point where it's too tight of a fit and I can no longer get in there to open the drawer. It's going to jam or seize in there somehow and I can't force it out from the back. So this is a good example of what you're going to be expecting when it is you're doing this in solid wood. Okay, so carcass is there, front is marked because I'll need to know where that is. I have the biggest tool we're going to be using for fitting the drawer is going to be a smoothing plane. This is a number 3, and I find these to be the most comfortable to use. Number 4 I've used, but they're just heavier, and I just feel like a number 3 kind of does the job, and it's a little bit easier on me as I'm using it because this is going to be a process. The other thing I want to point out here is that I have this board clamped to my bench, and I need a bench in this place because I'm going to be removing material off of the outside faces of the drawers, and so the sides specifically. So I need to make sure that I have something in place to keep this still while I'm doing that. Now, I would never do it in this manner because if I start planing here, there's a lot of area that's unsupported, and the torque that I'm going to be introducing onto this drawer can really put stress on the joints. So with a board like this, it's extended over from the edge of the bench, I can slide this into this environment and I can hand plane against that material and I relieve any pressure off of the joints. It's only working against the angle of the dovetail, and so this secures it. So this is what I'll need to do, and I would recommend you all do the same. And preparation of fitting the drawer. Alright, I think that's where I want to be. So I just sharpened this plane, which is always a good practice for doing any finishing work. And for what we're doing here, that is definitely in the wheelhouse of what we're up to. Okay. So, plane is set, cabinet has been waxed. Now I'm going to start the process of fitting. So on the table saw, we have already cut the width of this, so this corner should fit in no problem. Same with the other corner. Where the issue is going to exist is that we've cut this so it's just a little bit too big to fit into this carcass. So I need to minimize that dimension so that I can get this in place. So I'm just going to continue to work on the same face that I just planed, and I'm always going to plane towards the center of the board. If I were to plane from the back of the drawer all the way to the front, I know I would get a ton of tear out in the front or spelching from the front. So I'm only going partial distance across the faces of these sides of the drawers. And I want to take some fairly minor shavings here. If I'm overly ambitious with the shavings, I can easily make my drawer way too small in a hurry. So these are little wispy shavings, which is great. Sharp plane makes all the difference in the world. So I continue to do this until I can get this engaged. I can see that I'm getting close. I can fit this in on the bottom corners, which is good. Can't do much on the top yet, so I need to remove a little bit more material off of the top. And I'm going to stick with the same face for the time being. I think I'm going to start to introduce some trouble if I were to plane this face and then flip it over and do the opposite face, because then I no longer lose the flat reference that I have on this side. Now, having said that, I am absolutely going to be removing material off of both of these faces. Sometimes I just can't avoid it. Very close. So this is good. I've got full engagement here, so this is starting to go on the carcass, which is good. Sometimes if I've made this drawer a little bit larger, there's going to be a lot more passes to take, but this is a good place to be. It's way too tight, which is great. The other benefit of leaving the back open is I can start to get some visual references of what's happening, where this is making contact. And it looks like it's pretty consistent on both sides, which is good. Now that, so in other words, I don't have a low spot over here somewhere that I need to true up before I move over to the other face, or the other side. So now that this one is flat in relationship to where it makes contact in the carcass, now I'm going to move to the other side of the drawer and start pulling that out. The other thing that I want to do before I get moving is that whenever you have two pieces of wood rubbing together, it's always going to create a little bit of bruising, and so you'll have these shiny spots on the face of the board, and with that bruising it shows me exactly where I need to remove material. So I'm going to do this until those pencil lines go away, and then continue to check once again. So still way too tight, but I'm getting close. And so with this, I need to get a reference of how much material I need to remove on the interior. The best tool that I have found is using some feeler gauge. So feeler gauge is just different kinds of metal that have been compressed or rolled down to different thicknesses. 6/1000th of an inch is what we're shooting for, and I need to look for a 6/1000th of an inch of a space or a gap on these areas. If I have anywhere that jams or binds in that spot, then it's way too tight. And what I'm able to do to my left is I can fit this into the space between the drawer and the carcass, and that's the gap that I want. But, and I can do that top to bottom for the most part, I need to transfer that over to this side as well. So now, because it's really tight over on this side, now I need to plane an equal amount off of this face until I can maintain that gap or find that gap inside the fit. So very simply, just went all the way across, trying to maintain even cuts. I'll revisit how this fit is going. So I'm not fitting this back and forth for any other reason except for to try to introduce those bruises. And once I've found or pinpointed where some problems are with the feeler gauge, I need to create as many of those bruises as I possibly can, because that will tell me exactly where it is I need to remove material. And there's no better tool than that. That looks pretty good. Trouble. And that back corner there. So this really is only doable if you have a good raking light, something that gives me a good visual across the face of the board to see exactly what's happening. In a darkly lit room or just fluorescent lighting, this becomes a lot trickier to do. Doable, but trickier. Okay, so I've tried to take care of the high spots, but I'm also increasing the length of my cut. Still watching out for this front of the drawer. Don't want to engage over there because the tear out is something I'm really trying to avoid. This is that time that I was talking about, that if you had a closed back, you're going to do this and you're going to find that you're tempted to push this close or more closed than this will allow, and it's going to start to jam. And so if I don't have access to get in there and there's nowhere for me to start to pull this out, then you start getting into real trouble as far as this being a permanent fit that's not movable. So okay, this is a good start. What I'm going to do off camera is I'm going to continue to true up the back end here, and then I'll start back up again when I transition to the front. But that is kind of the steps for getting started here, and we look pretty good. So, all right, be right back.